So I had a request on a video for braiding, and so I kind of put on my educator hat and I started to think about, well, what does that really mean? Because I think part of the reason I've avoided braiding is I don't technically do a lot of technical videos. I don't do hands-on videos, although it's the goal for this year. I haven't gone down that road yet. I've really always focused on theory, and there's very little information in terms of theory for your state board that you need to know for braiding, but somebody actually requested it, so I thought, let's do it. Let's break down the different types of braids so that we understand what is what and how they'll be described on your exam. As always, I have more information on my website, Cosmetology Exam Review. I do have a program there that has 12 explainer videos that I break down everything you need to know for your state board, for your theory test, in a different way than your textbook does. It doesn't matter what state you're in. It doesn't matter what textbook you used. Breaks it down that way, and then there's over 75 practice tests that you can take there to kind of just take them and practice and kind of review the information you need for your test. So let's move forward and let's talk about braiding. So a little secret about me that maybe you didn't know is that I did not know how to braid until I was on a TV show. Yes, I was on a television show called Global Beauty Masters. It was like the worst show ever. I don't know if I should actually say that. The hairstyles and the makeup artists and the nail techs were amazing. The show itself just was pretty lackluster. It was one of those shows that we would go as a team. We had a makeup artist, a hairstylist, and a nail tech. They'd give us a theme and we'd compete, for I don't even know what the grand prize ended up being. Honestly, it was that kind of anticlimactic. It was kind of crazy, but you can go see them on YouTube. They're pretty terrible, so don't say I didn't warn you. But as I got selected for this show, I started to think about the fact that it's one of those topics I kind of just breezed past in school. I didn't care. I was never huge into updos. I was never great at updos. I mean, it was fine. I could go do a wedding, but I was never stellar. That was never my wheelhouse. It was really cut and color for me. And so it was never my thing. And so when I realized I was going to be on TV, I was like, I should probably learn how to braid. So my friend Yvonne Turner, who is the best barber in the world, kind of sat with me, yes, she's a barber, but she's also a cosmetologist, sat with me and took my hands and taught me how to braid for real. I could do like a 3-strand braid, the basic stuff, but anything beyond that, I was a hot mess. And so the reality is I didn't need to know how to do that to pass my test, okay? And so you don't have to be an expert in braiding to get past this part of your theory test, but you do need to know some basics, and you need to be able to recognize which braid is which through a worded narrative description, right? Because they don't show you a picture and say, what braid is this? No, instead they use all of these words that we never use in the real world to describe them, and they expect you to visualize how you would do the braid. So hopefully if I talk you through that today, it will help a little bit. So again, today is really about recognizing the types of braids so that you can answer those questions as they show up on your state exam. So we start with the most common, which is that invisible braid, which is your French braid. Most girls learn how to do this pretty darn young. I did not. I had short hair. I think by the time I was in 5th grade, I had cut my hair pretty short. So this was not something I ever learned to do when I was younger. It still amazes me that people can sit there and French braid their own hair. That's unbelievable to me. But an invisible braid is a French braid because it's basically invisible. It kind of like melds into the hair, right? It doesn't sit on top of the head. It's actually into the hairstyle. It's also known as an overhand braid. And the reason it is because when you actually do that braid, you're crossing over each other. You're crossing 3 strands over, and you feed in hair from the sides, and you continue to feed into the braid, and you cross them over each other. So it's an overhand braid. So your invisible braid is also known as your French braid, which is also known as your overhand braid. They can describe it any of those 3 ways in your test. Just for your information, it is also known as a French plait. I have not actually heard of that. I've never seen a test call it that, but I wanted to make sure that if you saw that term, you understood it's still a French braid. Okay, so that's the most common one, is that invisible braid, which is the French braid, compared to the visible braid. Now the visible braid actually sits on top of the hair, right? So this is your Dutch braid, or it's basically a big old cornrow, okay? Now the visible braid is called the underhand braid, and you guessed why. It's because when we do this braid, we actually bring our hair and the strand underneath each other. So instead of crossing over, we cross under, and that's what kind of allows it to sit on top of the head instead of kind of molding into the hair, all right? So the visible braid is called the underhand braid, and that's usually how they'll describe it actually on your state board. They don't actually reference that it's just a giant cornrow. I mean, it's really what it is. We'll talk about it here in a second, the difference between a cornrow, what we call cornrows, but it's just your Dutch braid. It is performed almost the same way as a French braid. It's just that instead of crossing over, we cross under, okay? So the visible braid is the underhand braid, which is your Dutch braid. Or, if my computer will move forward, your cane row. So a cane row is a cornrow. They're the same thing. The technical word for your cornrow is a cane row, okay? So these are just visible braids or underhand braids that are usually typically pretty smaller, and we use many of them on the head. We use these for a lot of reasons. We can use cane rows as an actual style, like you see in this picture here, where they actually used it as the style. They do all different types of designs on them. Or we can use them for extension. So we can use them where we actually start an extension this way and then feed hair in to add length. Or we can use cane rows and then sew extensions into the cane rows to add actual long hair onto the head, okay? So we use them in a couple different ways. It's just remember that a cane row is a cornrow, and they are both visible braids, which means they're underhand braids, okay? Let's move into box braids. So box braids is just the plait that you know, right? A box braid is just that 3-strand braid that you know and love, that you learned as a child. You know, it could be something, I mean, we use this beyond braiding. We use, beyond hair. We use the box braid when we're doing, if you sail, any type of braid. Anytime someone picks up a rope and braids it, it's usually a box braid, okay? These are your single free hanging braids. We also can feed extension hair into these to add length if we wanted to. They're also known as micro braids, but usually on your state board, box braids, you'll see them as single braids or plaits, okay? So it's just that simple 3-strand braid that we do, that we learn as a kid. When you sit there and you bop, 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 you knock that out, okay? So that's your box braid. Then there's some other fun ones that might appear in your test. The first 2 could, the third one doesn't, but it's one of my favorite braids, so I included it here. One that might appear in your test that is pretty simple is a rope braid, and the rope braid is just going to be described as a 2-strand braid. Okay, now a rope braid can be done like a French braid, that it's on the scalp and you're feeding hair in and then going through to the length of the hair, or sometimes you just start here at the base and you just do those ends as a rope braid. It's literally just kind of like a 2-strand twist. Then you have your fishtail. When you get into fishtail, just think Elsa, right? Think Frozen. So when we do a fishtail braid, it's a 2-strand braid. And what we're doing is we're taking hair from underneath and we're crossing over the entire strand. Taking hair from underneath, crossing over. Now, guys, you can go watch videos all over the place on how to do these. Like I mentioned earlier, my goal for 2023 is to finally get this set up to do some hands-on, actual technical videos. I think I've shied away from that because I don't train students for the hands-on portion of their state board. I never have. I lived in Florida. We didn't do that. So it's going to be difficult to differentiate, because when I make hands-on videos, they won't be geared towards state board passing. And that's what cosmetology exam review has been all along. But I do have a lot of tips and techniques to help you, and I can do that with the fishtail too. So we'll get there, I promise. But for now, just go watch some videos. Fishtail is one of the easiest to knock out. It is one of the ones I was able to learn even before Yvonne took my hands and taught me how. So fishtail braid, 2-strand braid, we take hair from underneath, we cross over. Then you have your waterfall braid. I just love this braid. It's one of the newer braids that's come out. I just think it's a really pretty braid. We perform it like we do a French braid, except we leave strands out. And so we're only pulling in new hair from one side, and then we're leaving hair out on the other side. So just a little inspiration there, okay? So these are some of your other fun braids. Rope braid, fishtail could very well show up on your state board. Waterfall, probably not, okay? Once you're feeling confident, go at it, okay? You can start adding more and more and more strands in. So my ultimate goal when I started to learn to braid was to get to a 5-strand braid, and I did get there. It took a lot of practice, and I'm not saying they were great, those 5-strand braids. They were pretty janky looking, but I got through it and I did it. Because the reality is once you can get past the 3-strand, 4-strand, you can start adding 5-strand, 6-strand. You can keep adding strands, 14-strand, 15-strand. You really can, and they become more and more intricate the more you add in. It's all about organizing your pieces and knowing where you're weaving in and out, okay? So there's all sorts of cool things you can do with braids once you understand where to hold your hands, how to hold your hands, and how to move everything, okay? So it takes practice. I will tell you that. Like I said, I didn't even learn to braid until way further into my career. And then it took a lot of practice to really kind of be able to do a braid that I could be proud of. because for a while they were just atrocious. But yeah, so today really was about walking you through the narrative, what the test is going to call them between visible braid, invisible braid, underhand, overhand, all of that kind of stuff, because it's hugely important that you recognize which is which in text for your state board, okay? It's all about recognizing it when you read the description, okay? So just let's start with that. I'll do another video on extensions coming up on the different types that you'll see on your state board. Again, not going to go into a technical application and teaching you how to do extensions, but I think it's important that in text you're able to read and understand which is which. So with that, I'll say thank you. Just remember, if you need some help with your state board, go to cosmetologyexamreview.com. I do have monthly subscriptions. I have annual subscriptions to save you some money if you want to go that way. You can start taking them now. It's broken down completely different than any of the textbooks do. I try to do it by subject matter, break it down with one module completely just on skin disorders and all the disorders of the world of cosmetology. You can purchase by module or you can purchase the program. So just go check it out, see if anything there will help you, and share, subscribe, do all of the things. All right. Have an amazing day, and thank you so much for watching.